So, hi everyone, my name is Maya. I'm glad to be a part of the Vega IT Pulse. Our today's guest is former CEO of the WD-40 company. He is now the chairman of the board. Probably you have heard of WD-40 company and probably you have their products on your shelves at home. He spent 35 years in the same company promoting the idea that being a leader is all about people. We will talk about that today. All while being responsible for the company culture and values, strategic planning, revenue growth, finance administration, 500 plus employees, and more than $500 million in revenue. Get it. Welcome.
G'day, Maya. It's beautiful. Thank you. It's so lovely to be with you here and in this beautiful city of Novi Sad. It's just, I get goosebumps. It's so great.
Oh, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. So can we start in a way that we are usually starting meetings here at Vega IT?
Absolutely.
So I will give you 30 seconds to tell me what made you happy or what have you been proud of in the last 7 days. Can you share that with us?
Oh, wow, that's easy. What made me happy was being able to come to Serbia for a new experience and just to meet the people and the culture, because culture of people is the lifeblood of life. And it was so beautiful to be here and visit and just to experience all new things. So you've created positive, lasting memories for me, which is what's important.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And my 30 seconds is your lecture yesterday at a Geekstone conference. I would like to reflect on that. You talked about not being the soul-sucking CEO, so maybe that is a good time to introduce this little thingy. Yeah, we don't like him.
That's Al.
That's Al. But we need to introduce him.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So will you tell me something more about Al?
Well, Al's a very undesirable individual. We call him Al, the soul-sucking CEO, because it's Al's behaviours that create toxins in the cultures of organisations. You know, Al thinks he's the king of the castle. You know, he's spent all these years climbing this corporate ladder. He feels that he's superior to everybody else. He has all the answers. His ego eats his empathy instead of his empathy eating his ego. He hates feedback. Never, never, never try to give alpha. And he thinks he's always right. And he believes micromanagement is absolutely essential. So he's quite undesirable. If I was you, I'd throw him out.
Well, maybe we can do that later.
Okay.
I would like to talk more about him.
Okay.
Just in order for get to know him better, and then we can knock him off the table. Okay,
perfect, yeah.
He will be our guest for a little bit. So, can you tell me more about what is your motivation behind a people-oriented CEO?
Many years ago, when I was given the privilege to lead WD-40 Company in 1997, you know, we were then about $100 million in revenue. Most of our revenue was in the United States. And we had a dream. We had a dream to take the blue and yellow can with a little red top to the world, because we believed there were problems we could solve. And interestingly enough, I was flying from Los Angeles to Sydney on a Qantas 747, way over the Pacific Ocean. And my light was probably the only light on in the cabin because I was reading. And I was reading some work of the Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama's quote was, "Our purpose in life is to make people happy. If we can't make them happy, at least don't hurt them." And what I thought of was, around me, not necessarily at our company, but everywhere I looked, there were leaders hurting people. And it was at that time, at 37,000 feet, somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, I said, that's not going to be me. I have to find a way to be different. So that was my motivation, was to be a leader that sent people home happy, because happy people create happy families create happy communities create a happy world, and Maya, we need a happy world. So let's do our best to do that today, every time we can.
Exactly, I do agree. So today you're working a lot as a consultant as well. You work with a lot of companies. Can you tell me what are you seeing today in the organizations? What are they facing with?
You know, all of us would say we would never have wanted COVID to happen. There's no doubt about it. But one of the things COVID has done, it slapped leaders up the side of the head. And what do I mean by that? They've actually realized that it is all about the people. People made choices. I wrote an article on LinkedIn called The Great Escape. You know, there's a lot of talk about the great resignation. People are not resigning from companies, they're escaping toxic cultures. Cultures where people are not valued, not like it is here. You know, just walking in your offices today, there's people smiling everywhere, people are happy, they're enjoying the work they do. So I'm ashamed that I am needed. I shouldn't be needed to talk to CEOs about this. That is so sad. But what I'm seeing is a lot of them are saying, wow, we have to listen and we have to think about how do we create a culture where people go to work every day, they make a contribution to something bigger than themselves, they feel safe and are set free by a compelling set of values, and they go home happy. So I'm ashamed that my work is needed, but I'm glad that there are more and more listening to it now, because it is all about the people.
Yes, it is a shame that today that the pandemic had to happen in order for us to realize that the people are the only value the company has, right?
Yeah, and you know, sometimes you need things in life that shake you up.
Yeah.
To actually, you know, things happen to us at times to really awaken us, and I think this was an awakening. So it's sad, but I think the world will be a better place if we decide to do something about it. And the interesting thing, Maya, is that I speak to a lot of CEOs where I talk about, you know, the power of the people creating cultures, and a lot of them say, well, that's all soft stuff. Well, it's not soft. It's hard stuff to do. And if it was soft, I say to them, so why aren't you doing it? It's hard work in being able to do what you need to do to be a leader that's both tough-minded and tender-hearted. Because great culture is not about pizzas and popcorn.
Yeah.
It's about having a balance between being tough-minded and tender-hearted. I said at the conference yesterday, you know, it's really selfish when we as leaders protect our comfort. And what do I mean by that? You know, when it feels good to reward and applaud someone. You know, you feel good. Hey, I want to reward you and applaud you. But a great coach who's observing the play of their team, if they don't redirect play that is not helping the player and the team win because they feel bad about doing it, it's their comfort zone is not comfortable, because having that frank, open-minded conversation from time to time is really hard. But the more you love your people and the more you care for your people, the more important it is for you to have that conversation, because that conversation helps the player play their best game, which helps the team win, and a winning team is what we really need. So again, I think we have these intersections in life that are important.
Exactly, and you talked about yesterday about when you're a leader and if you're acting like a coach, you will never come to the podium and take the prize, the trophy.
That's what Al does all the time.
Yeah.
You know, someone is the winning team, and what happens? The coach goes to the podium and takes the prize and looks down on the team. That's not the place for the coach. The coach's job is to be on the sideline, watching the play, and spending a lot of time in the locker room building the culture, not running on the field and kicking the ball, and definitely not going to the podium to take the prize. The prize belongs to the team, not to the coach.
Amazing. Can you share some of your thoughts, more of your thoughts about how to be a good coach/leader?
Yeah, well, again, a coach is about helping people step into the best version of their personal self. The three most important words I ever learnt in my life are, I don't know. And being comfortable with those three words is very important. You know, if you have all the answers or you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Your job as a leader is not to have the answers. Your job as a leader is to create the environment where the true brilliance of those that are around you comes out. So the job of a great coach is, and I've said as a CEO, I've suffered from a very, very, very uncomfortable medical problem. Do you know what it's called?
No.
It's called bleeding tongue syndrome. You have to bite your tongue. You don't have all the answers. Your job is to bring out the best of others. So for that, you have to sit back. And I often introduce myself as, G'day, because I'm Australian, as you know, even though I live in the US. G'day, I am the consciously incompetent, probably wrong and roughly right CEO and chairman of WD-40 company, because that's who I am. I don't have the answers.
Amazing. Amazing. And it's, at some point, actually, you asked the audience if somebody from the audience knows else in their lives.
There was hands.
There were hands. The people raised their hands. Oh, my God. And it was quite ashamed because a lot of people are from the IT industry, and a lot of CEOs in the IT industry are young people. How it happens, actually? How somebody becomes Al?
Well, one of the things about Al is he doesn't understand the value of scar tissue. Do you know what I mean by scar tissue? So a scar tissue is not a reaction, not a result of being hurt. It's a result of healing. And to be, you have to go through these learning moments in life. And, you know, I've met a lot of, I'm going to say young, and I mean that in a respectful way, who are, I'm going to get this done, I'm going to do this, I'm going to, you know, be the one that's going to lead the team. They haven't learnt yet that it's not about them. You know, one of the things I say to CEOs when I coach, it's not about you. It's about the people you lead. So don't think it's about you. So maybe a lot of the people who put up their hand are in that environment where they don't feel valued.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things I spoke about yesterday was the power of belonging. And one of the things we've been through in this pandemic is what I call emotional solitary confinement. If you're a prisoner in a prison, you're punished to the extent of a high degree of punishment because when you're put in solitary confinement. And what is solitary confinement? A room on your own for a long period of time. And we've been going through that at COVID, is people have been in emotional solitary confinement. And that doesn't create that atmosphere. You know, looking around your office, I am sure a lot of people left home today and said to their husband, wife, or significant other, I am so excited to go to the Vega office today because, fill in the blank, because they're having fun being here. They know they belong. You know, they're having that human connection. They're friends. They're doing great work. And that's why it's so successful, is because people are coming to work here every day, doing meaningful work, having great values, learning something new, and going home happy.
Exactly. I do agree. And one of the things I'm really, I want to tackle more on you calling yourself the tribe and not the team. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So, you know, a team is something you play on to win a particular game. So, you know, when I was a young guy, back at school in Australia, I played rugby, right? So what happened? If you're on a team, you play a game, and a game has a start and a finish. So it's finite in its time. And you play the game, and the whistle blows, and there is a referee to tell you whether you're right or wrong. And a good coach is not a referee, they're a coach. So within tribes, you have to have a team to do certain things. But if you think about tribes in history, we as human beings started as tribes. You know, Ugg the caveman many years ago was part of a tribe because people come together. So a tribe is something you belong to. So when I was thinking about belonging, I thought, well, I'll study the attributes of tribes and just see if that's true. And I looked at the Indigenous Australians and the Fijian Islanders. And one of the things that came out very strongly, which I loved so much, was the number one responsibility of a tribal leader was to be a learner and a teacher. So if I was to be able to get in a time capsule with you and we could zoom our way back thousands of years into the middle of my homeland, Australia, in the middle of the desert, looking at Uluru, that big rock, and we were observing a tribe of Indigenous Australians meeting, what would the tribal leader be doing? He'd be teaching the young tribe members to throw a boomerang. Why? Because the boomerang was the tool of survival. If you weren't able to throw the boomerang, the chances of the tribe surviving were very little. So it's very clear that in a tribal atmosphere, the number one responsibility of the tribal leader is to be a great learner and a great teacher. So I love teaching. I teach at the University of San Diego. But why do I love teaching? Is because in the environment of teaching, I learn so much also. So tribal leaders, number one, they have to be great learners and teachers. Number two, they have to ensure that there is a great set of values in place in the organisation or the tribe. These are the written reminders of the only acceptable behaviour within that tribe. And then they've got to love their people enough to reward them and applaud them for living those values, but they have to be brave enough to redirect them. I spoke yesterday about the petri dish of culture. Yeah. When I was at school in Australia, again, my science teacher gave me a petri dish. And they said, we're going to grow culture in this petri dish. So what's important? The ingredients that you put in and the attention you pay to it consistently. So you start by putting the ingredients in that's going to grow the culture you want. But as a tribal leader, if you're not watching that petri dish every day, and if you're not enhancing the good behaviour and redirecting the bad behaviour will send that petri dish sour very quickly. So the definition that I have of culture is culture equals values plus behaviour times consistency.
Yeah. In order for us to do that, to make ourselves a tribe, we need to... No. would you be...
Al?
Al is out. Al is out.
Now we can really celebrate.
Yeah. Now we can talk about some other burning topics.
Oh, right.
Okay, are you ready for them?
I'm ready, come on.
Okay, so the buzzword today is hybrid work. What are your thoughts on it?
So there's a lot of talk about virtual in-office work. I would call it work from where. Instead of hybrid, it's work from where. Work from where you need to work from to do the best work you need to do. So there is no doubt that there is some work that you don't need to drive to an office to do every day. And we've got more comfortable with that. And today it's more doable because we actually have the technology to do it. One of the things that I learned in COVID is in times of real and great need, we can pivot around fear. We had at our company all of this technology in place. We'd spent millions of dollars around the world equipping our offices with the technology to be able to have successful virtual meetings. And I was so frustrated that we weren't using it. I was talking to our IT people and our training people. We're not training people enough. We're not doing enough. They're not using it. Why weren't they using it? Because they were afraid. They didn't want to be vulnerable. Then COVID hit, the switch went on, there was no option. So now they got comfortable with it. So now they've learned to be very productive virtually. So let's do that. However, there is work that we need to do when we're together. Great work that needs great minds. Great work that needs interaction. You know, think about a strategic planning meeting that's virtual. You know, a strategic planning meeting is a lot of people in a room with a lot of flip charts and pens, coming up with ideas, and it's that dinner afterwards as well, where you can get the chance to talk, you know, this is what I thought of, I didn't mention that, and it's the meeting the next day. So I think, let's be careful we're not boxing things in to say, today it's not necessarily you always have to be somewhere, you need to be where you need to be to do your best work. The other thing that I'd like to bring up is, in my leadership journey over the years, the people that I've been able to observe in real life are the ones that I've been able to really understand their value. And if my daughter is a dance teacher, and she's also a world-renowned dance judge. And she says to me years ago, Dad, before you put a dancer on Broadway, you need to watch them dance off Broadway. And I said to her, Kate, what do you mean by that? She said, well, if you've watched them dance off Broadway, you've identified the dance steps that they need to improve on to be able to be that Broadway dancer. If you were to put them on without doing that, how would you know where they need to improve? Which tells me I have to see people in action. I want to see them in rooms. I want to see them collaborating. I want to see them, how do they greet people? You know, are they people? And you don't get that. You know, many times I've been online and there's been someone, you know, on the screen and I thought that person isn't reacting the way that I normally see them react. Now, if I was in a meeting, after the meeting, I'd go down and see them and say, Maya, are you okay? Is everything all right? You know, I can't do that in a virtual meeting. Now, I pick up the phone after the meeting and call them, but it's that personal interaction of showing you care, which is so important.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And another thing here in Serbia, in IT industry, many younger people are frequently changing jobs. And what would be your advice to them? And how will employers in the future look at them?
Well, the question is, why are they frequently changing jobs?
Mostly is the salary. They are offered a higher salary in the other company.
So, you can chase money all you like, but I'd say to them this: are they going to a place where they are delivering their best work and going home happy and feeling secure? Because, we're coming into a time that's going to be even more turbulent than we know. And you can't pay your way into success. So when you're looking at, am I going to switch jobs? Is the company you're going to one that's going to look at you and say, we really care about you? Look at what's just happened with Twitter. Elon Musk bought Twitter. And the first day he owns it, he went in and he fired the top management team. The people there are scared now because who's going to get laid off? What's going to happen? So, yes, if you're just chasing the dollar, eventually the dollar will not reward you, because it's not about just the dollar. It's about your life and your opportunity for advancement and your opportunity to feel like you're somewhere where people actually treasure you. So you can't buy that happiness.
Yes, where you can feel like a part of the tribe, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Part of the tribe. And you have spent many decades at WD-40 company. I'm curious to know more about your motivation to stay at one job for all those years.
I love it. I have the best job in the world. I wake up every day to help people create positive, lasting memories. The most exciting part of that is finding out all the different ways to do it. So I made myself a promise that if I ever woke up one morning and never wanted to go to any job, I would never go there again. For 35 years, I've woken up every morning wanting to do what I do because I love it. I love the people. I love the experience. What a gift I've been given to be able to be the CEO of a US public company for 25 years. If we were a Fortune 500 company, I would be the 9th longest serving CEO of any public company. And I am the longest serving Australian of any US public company. Not many people get the opportunity to do that. So I am so grateful that I've had the opportunity to do that. And to be able to say that we've built I had a dream. I said, I want to build an enduring company that I'll be proud to pass on to the next generation. And I feel like I've done that. And it's interesting, coming over this morning in the car, the song came on, I've had the time of my life, from Dirty Dancing.
Yes.
And they had a party for me in Hawaii a few weeks ago when we had a big meeting. And they played that song. And it's like, I've had the time of my life, but I owe it all to you. I owe it to the people that I've had the privilege of working with over time, because I got to stand on the shoulders of giants.
In serving them.
Serving them.
Okay. I get goosebumps. I really got goosebumps. And for those who don't know, you are the person who never made a mistake.
I've never made a mistake in my life.
You have never made a mistake in your life. Please tell us more about that.
What I've had is millions of learning moments. And a learning moment is a positive or negative outcome of any situation that needs to be openly and freely shared to benefit all people. I believe most people don't lie in organisations. I believe they fake and hide. Why do they fake and hide? Because they're afraid. What are they afraid of? The consequences of failure. The consequences of making a mistake. Well, the reality is we make mistakes all the time. But why do we call them mistakes? If we turn that around and call it a learning moment or a learning opportunity, then we're given the permission to say, I'm not perfect. The best baseball player in the world only hits 300 and something out of 1,000 balls, but they get paid millions of dollars for making 700 learning moments, because that's the number of times they've had a learning moment. Yeah. So, I think what we need to do is remove this, veil of failure and call it a learning moment. And particularly in this time, we're going through now what I would call the most turbulent business time I've ever experienced. You know, in an aeroplane flight, you have headwinds and you have tailwinds. And they're okay because the pilot knows they're there and the pilot knows how to handle the headwind and the tailwind. What we don't know is where is the turbulence. And that's what's going on in business today. There is so much turbulence and we fly into it, whether it be the geopolitical situation, the continuing, impact of COVID, wars, changing leaders. Look at the UK, 5 prime ministers within I don't know how many years. What do the people think about leadership there? But if we were to look at that turbulence and learn from it and turn the turbulence into opportunity, then there's a chance we'll make it through and we'll land this plane. So that's what I think is really important.
I would like to talk more about the crisis and the things that are happening right now. But let me go back, because when you're talking about mistakes, you are actually talking about psychological safety. What are your thoughts on that?
So my belief, the core of psychological safety is trust. And if you can create trust in an organization, then you create psychological safety. So what's one of the key ingredients of trust? Vulnerability. So how vulnerable are you being within an organization to build trust so people feel like they have safety? And people feel unsafe in an environment where there's low trust, and so it's exactly what we need to do, is to build trust. And that's do what you say you're going to do, live your values. It's really the same thing as being a decent human being. But there are people out, I'm surprised you told me earlier that there are actually people doing courses and getting certificates in psychological safety.
Yeah.
Well, wake up.
Just be a good person.
Just be a good person.
Just be a good person.
Do unto others as you would like to be done to yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. We have it in English as well.
Probably in every other language.
Yeah.
Okay. So my last question would be...
last question. Do we have to stop? This is so much fun.
Are you having fun? Okay. This is not going to be the last question. But I'm curious to know, because you have probably experienced a lot of crises during your work life, right? So what would be some of your advice on how to use those tough times, not just to survive, but even to get better?
So, some of the things, one of the big learning moments I've had in life is the crisis looks bigger than it really is. There was a great book written, and it was called Who Moved My Cheese? I don't know if you ever read that book or not, but it was about a mouse that couldn't find their way out of a maze. It was just a small book. And there was a follow-on from that, which was called Out of the Maze, which was a story about how the mouse found its way out of the maze, out of the maze it was in. And there was something in that book that I found truly, truly valuable, and it's this question: why do I believe what I believe? Why do I believe what I believe? And in many circumstances, when there's a crisis, our beliefs start to draw us in the wrong direction. Brené Brown has a great statement, which I love. She says, in the absence of facts and data, we make up stories. And that is so true. And those stories become our belief. And those beliefs become our truth. So in a time of crisis, the first thing I would say to her, stop. Let's make sure we truly understand the situation. Don't be driven to act immediately, because that'll be acting on impulse, and it doesn't work. And I often say to people, if you want the answer now, it's no. I need to think about it. So my advice in time of crisis is center yourself. Make sure you understand. Question, why am I believing what I believe? Gather the facts. Get good counsel. What if the decision I make now, what will be the impact a year or 2 or 3 years from now? Take your time to deliberate. And then, as Shakespeare says, if it needs to be done, best be done quick. He didn't say do it quick. He said if it needs to be done, best be done quick. So work out first if it needs to be done.
Yeah, stay mindful, stay in the present moment. Okay.
Stay calm.
Stay calm. Have you heard of the new podcast Brené Brown had with Simon Sinek and Adam Grant?
I have listened to it.
You have listened to it. The one thing that really struck me was when Simon said that the great resignation is actually the synonym. It's a new word for this disengagement.
Right. It's the great escape.
It's the great escape.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And, Simon and I are good friends. We met each other 14 years ago on a panel, and we just built clicked. And I love Simon's infinite game. It is so true about, a lot of organizations play this finite game where they're trying to beat their competitor. No, the infinite game is you just become better every day. So I love his work, and I treasure his friendship.
Yeah, Simon is great. And on your website, you have a quote that says, "As leaders, our job is to never stop developing ourselves. It is a journey of self-discovery that benefits everyone who influence. What do we stand for? What motivates us personally?" Can you tell me more about how did your development path actually occurred? What did you do? What are you doing now? Are you reading books? Are you talking to someone? What are you doing?
Yeah, sure. So, I hope I love the quote, ancora imparo, which means learning I always am. So I believe that, I have a wonderful question I ask. When was the last time you did something for the first time? And I think that, teaching at the University of San Diego, being in the MG 100, which is the Marshall Goldsmith Global Group, which I was one of the founding members of, getting the opportunity to, find learning from people like Simon Sinek, Kim Blanchard, Marshall Goldsmith, Ron Carosi, Chester Elton, these great people who've researched, because I'm not an academic, and I just learn from these folks and then go and try and see if it works, and if it still works, I keep on doing it. And and I read. I actually listen to more books than I read these days. There's a wonderful book that I just mentioned, Ron Carosi. It's called To Be Honest. And this book that he's just written recently is one of the best leadership books I've ever read or listened to, because it really gets to the heart of why people aren't being honest in organizations. So I recommend that to the listeners as well. But I'm alive, I woke up this morning and I'm going to pay attention to the world today, and hopefully something will happen and I'll wake up again tomorrow.
Yeah. Learn as you do, right?
Yeah.
All right. And also I want to talk about one more thing. So we have spoken a lot about how to be a good leader. And I'm totally fond of that. Okay, so we don't need any more else. But somehow I think people actually forget that you need still to be a good employee.
Oh, absolutely.
To your leader. And I want to talk more about managing up.
Yes.
Are you up for that?
Sure. So when you talk about managing up, I think that's really about communicating. And why, managing up is about having the comfort zone to be able to share how you really feel. And if you're not being a good leader, nobody's going to manage up to you, because they're going to be scared of whatever reaction you give them. So managing up is, it's a two. You might recall yesterday I talked about the responsibility of the coach and the responsibility of the person being coached.
Yeah.
And their responsibility is, number one, is there a clear understanding of what we're going to hold each other accountable for? Because that's where most organizations and leadership falls down, because they don't know what they're going to be held accountable for, or the leader changes the rules, day by day. I thought I did what you wanted. No, well, you did, but I didn't want that now. I want something different. Oh, so is there a clear understanding of what we're going to hold each other accountable for? Very important. And the person that you're coaching has to say, I know you mean me no harm. I know you mean me no harm. I know that you're here to help me. But to say that, they have to trust the leader, that they mean them no harm. I'll give you a really quick example. The number 2 value at WD-40 Company is we value creating positive, lasting memories in all of our relationships. That's our number 2 value. Now, you can interpret that any way you want. You might say everybody's going to be always happy. Well, that's not true. I was in a meeting some time back in our offices, and one person in that meeting early in the morning was not creating positive, lasting memories. It was one of those meetings, Maya, and I'm sure you've been in it, where someone in the room was kind of, the toxins were just they were sucking the oxygen out of the room, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do as a leader? Well, option A is you stop the meeting, you say, Maya, stop behaving like that. You are really making this meeting a bad meeting. Don't do that. Why? Firstly, Maya gets really, really embarrassed. Secondly, everyone else in the meeting says, when is the day coming when I'm going to get shot in public? Number two, do nothing. That's not good, because now you're not being the great coach. You weren't brave enough to run on the field. Number three. So what did I do? At the end of the meeting, I said, Mate, let's go for a walk. So we walked out of the meeting and we walked into our parking lot. And now I'm bringing some fun into this conversation. I look behind a car. I look in a trash can. I look behind a tree. And she says, I'm using you as the example,
Yeah.
What the hell are you doing? Maya, I'm looking for you. The person I know and love was not in that room today. What's on your mind? What's getting in your way? That's open leadership. We had a conversation. Yeah, she'd had a bad morning. She was late. She spilt coffee. Everything that happened was insignificant, but it had totaled up. So getting back to your question about leading, a great employee managing up, is being able to know that I didn't mean her any harm or him any harm. So at the end of at that little conversation, I gave some coaching and feedback. That person went back inside. I saw them. They went to a few people that were at the meeting and said, "Hey, I'm sorry.
Wow.
That wasn't me." They said, "Are you okay? We know it wasn't you." What did I see the next morning? People going to her or him and saying, "Are you okay?" Those three words are probably the most powerful words any leader can ever use, is just going to someone and saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?"
That's vulnerability, actually, and also the brave. They have to be brave in order to show their vulnerability, right?
Exactly right. Exactly
Yeah.
right. So.
Amazing example. Thank you for that. It was an eye-opening, really eye-opening. And you said something as well, like having fun while working. That is important, right?
Life's a gift. Don't send it back unwrapped. Do a lot of unwrapping.
Do a lot of unwrapping. Well, rapid fire questions. Okay. Okay, just two of them.
Okay.
Okay, maybe three. Best book you have ever read?
Everything You Need to Know You Learned in Kindergarten by Robert Fulghum.
God, didn't know about that one.
It's many years old, but you know what it talks about?
No.
What you learned in kindergarten. Say please and thank you, pick up after yourself. If you go out at night, take a friend, don't steal. Or if you just take those basic principles of what you learned in kindergarten and applied them as a leader, you'll be a great leader.
Amazing. Second question. What course would you recommend for some leaders to take on?
Wow. Well, it depends where they are in the world, but any course that puts a mirror in front of their face and helps them understand who they are, because to lead, you have to know who you are. So the first course I did in my master's degree in leadership, which I did at University of San Diego in 1999, was a course that exposed me to me. And you know what? I didn't like some of me, but I had to change it because I had a little bit of Al.
A little bit Al. I think we all do. We all had it at some point in our lives, probably. And the third one is, if I want to start having learning moments and not mistakes, what should I say to myself when I make a mistake?
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Okay.
You know, there's two questions that a leader should ask. Did I do what I think is right? And if the answer is yes. And did I do my best? And if the answer is yes, then make peace with it and move on.
Amazing. Thank you, Gary, so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be with you, and I've just loved my time here in Serbia, and I can't wait to maybe come back again. Maybe you'll invite me to come back another time.
Of course we will. When can you come next? Well, thank you so much. I think many of us find this really useful, including me. I really look forward to opportunity to learn from you again. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.